Alrighty, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Sorry we're running a minute or two behind. That's completely on me. Quick bio break there. Not that you needed to know that, I guess. So we have a lot of people on today's meeting. So we're going to go ahead and let everyone come on in. Again, thanks for joining me. My name, if you don't know, is Charlie Gilkey. And today we're going to be talking all about the Momentum Planners. And so there's, I imagine there's going to be a lot of you who've never been on a webinar with us before. And again, we have a lot of people going on or on this one. So set up a few things going on. So first off, we are going to be taking questions towards the end of the webinar. You're going to see several different members of Team PF on the team on the call with us. So you're going to have Jess, who is going to be seeding links and helping us get people moved onto the chat and really helping out on that end. You're going to have Josephine Joe that's also on the chat. She's also a member of Team PF. And you might also see another amazing person named Jamie who is working with us on some marketing stuff. So she's here to help out, maybe listen, maybe throw in some questions if I'm not being clear. So you're going to see them over in the chat. Jess, now's a really good time for us to tell folks how they can ask questions and chat over in the sidebar as well.
Yeah, totally. Welcome everybody to the 2019 Momentum Planner webinar. You can click the Q&A button underneath the video to type a question directly to Charlie and the PF team. And you can also chat with other people on the call. You'll see a chat window on the right side of the screen. You can also ask questions there, though they might get kind of lost in the mix since there's so many of us. So if you really want to ask the question, I would suggest the Q&A at the bottom. But also in the chat, we will be posting resources throughout the call, so you can check those out there.
Great. And just in case you happen to toggle it, it says to all panelists and attendees, I think by default these days, which is fantastic, which means you're going to be talking to everyone. If you just want to send something to me or one of the panelists, or you're having issues with the webinar itself, Jess is probably the greatest person to send that to. You can just toggle it over in that right sidebar. It might be somewhere else, depending upon what technology you use, and send a message directly to Jess. Now, I will let you know if I try to watch the chat, I get crazy googly-eyed and I'm going to get distracted. So I'm not going to be watching the chat. But, there's a lot of great stuff that happens over there. I think we have most of the people we're going to get on today's call. Nope, people still piling in. Fantastic. So what I'm going to set up is just a few prompts for you. The first prompt is for you to take a few minutes, not minutes, take a few seconds and think about what 1, 2, or 3 things you want to get out of today's webinar. Just a pro tip for learning is when you approach anything you're learning with questions, you find the answers to those, and it really helps curate your experience. So what 1, 2, or 3 things would you like to get out of today's webinar? Okay. What I am going to be doing is walking through all of the webinars. I'm going to try to assume that you don't know anything about the webinars. You don't know anything about our core concepts. So those folks that have been on the roadshow with us for a while, bear with us. Many of you say that it's good to hear it again this time of the year. If you're brand new, please say, hey, that wasn't clear. I don't understand. We are here to help. Okay. So if you want to put the questions that you have in the chat window, that's great. If you just want to write them down, that's great. We are introvert friendly here, so you can just lurk. Lurking, I've been told, is bad. You can just hang out and listen and get everything you need. But if you're a chatty type, we're here for you too. All righty. So I'm going to jump in right on into our webinar. So let me go ahead and get that going. And because I never know what this does when I go to full screen, y'all are gonna have to let me know. Is everyone seeing full screen? Jess, can you let me know?
Yep.
All right, great. So here's what we're gonna be discussing today. Core concepts we use with the planners. I come from the old school military presenting style, so I'm just going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell it to you, And then I'm probably going to wrap up at the end with saying, here's what I told you. So we're just going to go with that. So core concepts, we're going to walk through each planner, starting with the annual momentum planner. I'll talk a little bit about themes and priorities and why they're better than resolutions, and then shaping quarters. Okay. So just as a little bit of background, in case you were curious, the planners started out as teaching aids and working as tools I use with clients because we were having troubles or, figuring out how to chunk projects down, and they were getting overwhelmed. So it's like, okay, we're just going to start breaking things down, chunking things down, and laying them out to make it happen. I have a background as a military logistics coordinator, so it was pretty straightforward for me to do this, but I realized I needed some tools to help teach people how to do that. So that's where this all thing started. What I want to say is, and remind you that there's a big difference between brainstorming and planning. And sometimes people get confused about this and they get themselves tied up in knots. When it comes to brainstorming, you want white spaces, you want big pieces of paper, you want things that you can sort of just get everything out. And that's the point of brainstorming. But when it comes down to planning, you do actually want to start making decisions. You want to start, constraining yourself. So the tools are more planning tools than they are brainstorming tools. And so if you ever get stuck with the planners, you're like, I can't put everything that I need to get down in my brain dump on the planner. It's because it's not what they're built for. Get out a piece of paper, do some mind mapping, do some listing. And then when you're ready to sort and really sequence and capture that, that's what the planning is for. So they're meant to be your productivity dashboard, not necessarily your to-do list. That will become more apparent when we start talking about block planning, because there are different tools that you might use that would help you not have a super overwhelming planner and not trying to have 18 things in one 30-minute section, which I know sometimes will confuse people, but we'll talk about that in a minute. What I will say is the action item catcher is a good companion if you don't use the other tools. Or if you don't use other tools like Asana or Basecamp or whatever work management software that you use. Jess will pop a link in the actual chat, but if you're listening, yes, we will be sending out a recording of this. Yes, that recording and that message will contain links, so you don't have to like scroll and go link crazy on us. Now, Jess, as always, like if you need to interrupt me with something, please do, because otherwise I'm not looking at any of the chat. All right. So that's a little bit of background on the planners. Jumping right in, there's some core concepts you need to know about. The project pyramid, if you've been hanging out with us for a while, that used to be called the Pyramid of Action Perspectives, which everyone told me that's a terrible name. I don't like it. I don't understand it. So we just changed it to the project pyramid. I'm excited, so I'm going to slow down. Help me breathe, y'all. Okay. The project pyramid is going to be in the book, in the book Start Finishing, which, by the way, is finished, y'all. I just sent in the copy edits. That thing is happening in September, but I won't go into that now because we're talking about the momentum planners. But for those following along, the book is coming. The name of the book is Start Finishing. More about that to come. Another concept we're going to talk about is the 5 projects rule, the 4 kinds of blocks, constraints and displacement, and then using the 2-hour rule to chunk your projects down. So let's start with the project pyramid. Alrighty. So one of the main things that makes the planners work is that it has you focus on a certain segment of time and chunking and planning and sequencing at that time perspective without jumping all over the place. Where we overwhelm ourselves is when we try to think about one slice of time at the same time we're thinking about another slice of time. It's really, really hard to do that. Actually, we are like neurologically not able to do that very, very well. So if you're like, I can't do the whole like yearly planning because everything from the day comes up, and then you start doing the short circuiting, it's not you, it's all of us actually, right? And so the whole point of the planners is it helps you start breaking these goals down or building them up to bigger clumps. So in a very simple sort of imagine that you have one yearly goal. Now, something that I have to watch myself up with is it's sort of this weird way that I think anymore, is that a goal is automatically going to turn into a project, right? If you have a goal without a project attached to it, you have an aspiration, you have an idea, but you don't actually have something you're going to do. So a goal needs a project. So you can think of an annual size project can be broken down in a very simple model into 4 quarter size projects. Those 4 quarter size projects could themselves be turned into 3 month size projects. And then those month size projects, as you might imagine, can be turned into 4 week size projects for the 4 weeks of the month, standard month. And then under there, we can't show it because it would get even more crazy than the picture already looks. There's a whole bunch of tasks, which, you know, roughly things that you could do in one step, think 15 minutes or so. And then there are blocks. We'll talk about blocks here in a second. Okay, so when we start talking about how to use the planner, you'll see me very quickly say, hey, what's the quarter size project that contains that? And then we can talk about, hey, what are the month size chunks of that? What are the week size chunks? If you find it incredibly inaccessible, you could just think quarter size chunks, month size chunks, weeks. When we up at the quarter level and months level, we sometimes say objectives so that we know we're talking about projects that are bigger than just like the week size project, which is normally what we think, okay? The project pyramid powers so much of what's going to make the momentum planners work for you. It's a simple concept, I think, but application gets hard because one thing we have to think about with the project pyramid is this is just one goal that could decompose into all of those smaller size projects. Well, what happens when you have 17-year size projects? Think of everything that happens under there. It's craziness. So this is a lot of the reason why when you're looking, you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm doing too much. Probably what's going on is you've committed to too many larger size projects that are spawning off lower size projects. And when it hits you at the day or when it hits you at the week, that's when you're getting confused because like, oh crap, I got way too much going on because, you know, it's bigger at the bottom than at the top. Okay. I'm going to break my convention of not looking at chat, but I'm going to check in real quick. Well, I'm still not going to look at chat. Is this pretty clear to folks? If it's pretty clear, just type TU in the chat. That means thumbs up. You don't have to figure out what the emoji is. If there are any major questions, now's the time. I do want to pause because if you don't get this, it's hard to go forward. All right, I'm going to look at the chat. I'm going to do it. Help me. Or not, you can't do it in full screen. Learn something new today. Actually, you can't do it. Okay. Okay, most people, looks like most people get it. Great, great, great. Thanks so much. Great, you're with me. Okay, go back into full screen mode, Charlie. In case you ever give these types of things and you have to be the person that always has to say what you're doing as you're doing it, you're not alone. I have to do it too. All right, so that's the project pyramid, drives everything. That's going to get us to the 5 projects rule. Now, here's where everyone, I won't say everyone, here's where y'all are going to bail on me. And I say you're going to bail on me because most of the creative giants we talk to, they're like, there's no way we can do it in 5 projects. I got all the things. And then I want to do all the things. And then what about this other hobby that I have? And then what about everything else? Okay. The 5 projects rule is hard to embrace on the front side. It's your enemy, but then it's your friend. So it's shorthand because no one but me is going to say the long form of it. So the long form of it is no more than 5 active projects per time perspective. No more than 5 active projects per time perspective. What does that mean? That means no more than 5 quarter-sized projects at a time. Because remember, those 5 quarter-sized projects are going to turn into a bunch of month-sized projects. Each one is, right? That means if you're looking at the weekly level, when you're planning your week, that also means no more than 5 active projects per time perspective there as well, okay? So we're going to work at the same level, and it will work out when we'll see it when we really get into the planning, that if you really honor the rule, it's going to make a lot of space for the things that matter most, and a lot of other things are going to get squeezed out. But we have a post about this, why strategic planning is so hard for creative people. You'll see a link here in just a second. The hard part about it is you got to let go of a lot of things, right? All of those maybes, all of those bright, shiny objects, everything like that, you can't plan and you can't get done because they're going to, again, decompose into all of those all of those projects, all those types of things. Now, the trick, and I'm reading someone's mind here, you may be asking the question, but I can't see it, is how can you tell how big a project is? Or how big is a month-sized project? Or how big is a quarter-sized project? Well, that depends. We'll get to that in just a second. But what I'll say right now is you kind of got to know yourself. When I work with this with most people, when they start really thinking about their projects, they know about how long it's going to take them to do like a month-sized project, right? You know about what that feels like. We know about what a quarter-sized project feels like, even when we account for overcommitment and, I'm being optimistic. We kind of know what that feels like. What, in my experience working with people, we all sort of know at a fairly intuitive level how long those projects are, or how long we think they should take. How long they take and how long we think we should take, two different things. Now, just remember, 5 projects equals the upper limit. It's not the default. I'm not saying look at your planner, find your 5 things, do those 5 things, because you may not be able to do the 5 things. Part of that, I'll jump bullets ahead, is because you have a bunch of recurring projects or routines that you're already accounting for. So you have so many routines in your personal life, taking your kids to school, commuting, eating dinner, chores, all those types of things are routines that are taking up time, energy, and attention, and in my world count as a project. Okay, so you can't just assume that you don't have all that stuff in the background. And if you're going through stuff, like remember in our language here, projects count for anything that are taking your time, energy, and attention. So that means getting married is a project. That means moving is a project. That means going back to school to get a degree is a project. That means starting a business is a big project, but all the things that happen under that are projects, right? That closet of doom that you're not cleaning out, guess what? That's a project too, right? Everything is a project. And it's just what size of a project that it is, okay? So 5 projects is the limit, the upper limit, not the default. I'm gonna pause here and acknowledge that if you're going through a health challenge, if you're going through a relationship challenge, if you're going through financial hardship right now, managing that counts as a project, okay? So that means a lot of us are managing things outside of that, and we're not giving ourselves the space to say, like, this is a thing right now that I really need to pay attention to. I'm not seeing the chat, but I'm imagining either 2 things are happening. One is like, people are like, I get it now. And 2 people are like, what the hell? I don't have time to do what I need to do, okay? The frameworks and everything that are in the Momentum Planners, both the digital and the physical one, are really awareness generation tools. They're trying to show you the constraints and the reality that are in your life. So if they're reflecting that back to you, ain't my fault, right? I should say that. It's really the benefit of the tool, because once you accept the constraints, once you accept some of that, you can start working around it. But to assume every day that you're going to get 17 things done, when you can only possibly get 2 or 3 things done, is really going to lead you to a place of continual disappointment, which means continual shame waves, which means continual frustration with yourself, and eventually not believing in yourself. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to go the other way, so that when you make a commitment with yourself about your work, that you'll see it through. Or you'll make a commitment, not just about your work, about anything, that you'll see it through. Okay, so that's 5 projects rule. What we'll do towards the tail end of the webinar is we'll show how we can decompose bigger goals into smaller ones. But I want to put this in there for setup. All righty, I'm gonna check questions. Or Jess, are there any major questions, any major clarifications that I need to throw out for that?
Nothing too major as far as clarification. I think there are a lot of good questions coming in, especially in the Q&A. So yeah.
Keep them coming, y'all.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. All righty. I think we have another few things of setup here before we'll really start diving into the nitty-gritty of the planners themselves. I'm trying to teach you sort of what's under them, so that you understand how they work. So block planning. I mentioned earlier why you don't necessarily need to put all your tasks in your planner. Well, that's because some block planning will help with that. We have a post on the website. Jess will link to it here in just a second. That has 4 different types of, that talks about how to use the 4 different types of blocks. They're focus blocks. You all can read, so I'm not going to go in that. What I want to really pull out, though, is the admin blocks, because this is where people get stuck when it comes to the planner. They're like, do I put all of my tasks, all of my little emails, everything in my admin block, in my planner, or what do I do with those? Again, depending upon the work management tool that you use, like if you use something like Asana, you can have all of your admin tasks in Asana. And if you know that you have an admin block at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon from 2 to 3, then you just look wherever you keep all those little nits and gnats, and then you just start working down that list, and it doesn't clutter up your big list. Okay. That's where I mentioned the action item catcher can be really handy. You're probably already making to-do list already, so that's where that might want to come up. They're also in the Momentum Planner, the physical version, there is some space at the end for task notes as well. Okay, I want to focus on focus blocks. That sounds funny, but I'm going to focus on focus blocks because those are your limiting factor for momentum. The best work that you're trying to do, that stuff that requires the heavy lifting, heavy thinking, the creativity, the deep sort of sinking into the pocket that you need to do, all come during your focus blocks. Okay. If you don't have enough focus blocks, you're not going to be able to get your work done. And in my experience of working with private clients on this, that's one of the first places that I start actually is with how many focus blocks do you have right now? And if it's, 2 for the week, we have a problem, because that means that the things that are going to most drive their business or their life forward are things that they don't have time for. So we have to do some rearranging. We have a tool, I think it's called the weekly block scheduler, that will allow you to sort of put these blocks in there. What I'll say on this one is, for every major project that you have, you want to try to find at least 3 focus blocks per week to drive them forward. So 1 project, 3 focus blocks. That gives you just about enough momentum to keep it driving. Other than that, you're in that place to where like you don't quite get enough momentum to keep it going, and you spend more time in transition, picking it up, putting it back down, figuring out where you left it, picking it up, putting it back down, figuring out where you left it. All right. So that becomes the limiting factor for your momentum. There is a rough correlation between your energy levels and these blocks. So we talk also about heat mapping, which is basically the idea of doing the work based upon when you have the best type of energy for it. So your focus blocks, you want that sort of post coffee, you're ready to get into things, you got high energy. That's what you want your focus blocks to be. Your social or service blocks still need to be pretty high energy, unless you're just going to show up, and sometimes you can coast with social blocks, but you still need enough energy to be your best version of human. Admin blocks can be lower energy. And then lastly, recovery blocks. I've learned to put those in there because we'll overstuff our day and we don't, think about the fact that maybe we need to eat lunch, or maybe we need to go to the bathroom or work out or stretch, whatever helps you recover and recharge. That's what goes into your recovery block. So I say this half tongue in cheek. You know that you're going to have to go to the bathroom multiple times per day. Now, depending upon where you are, I'm not going to get into how long that might take, but it never shows up on your, calendar. For most people, it doesn't show up there. You're going to have to do it, but it's not planned for, right? So there's, 15 minutes to 2 hours, I don't know, of your day that's tied up in bathroom stuff between showers and all the rest of it, right? You're going to do it, but where does it show up? I'm not saying it should be on your planner, but the point of saying that is these blocks are pretty flexible. Why they're 90 minutes to 2 hours is you might, for a focus block, you might go all in for 60 minutes, do the best you can, and you're just kind of done after that 60 minutes. And then you might spend a little bit of time, scaffolding your work, and setting up your next work block, or you might decide to slide in and go to the bathroom, get some coffee, so on and so forth. So I wanted this to be a brief overview. I can hang out here a lot, so I'm going to go on, but largely what I want you guys to start thinking about is defaults and breaking time down into coherent chunks that you can use to power your projects, which means I'm going to go to the 2-hour rule. Focus blocks, notice 90 minutes, 2 hours for focus blocks, 90 minutes, 2 hours for service blocks. Notice 2-hour rule. That's not a mistake, or that's not accidental. Most of us know about what we can do with a full focused 2 hours of time. We don't know what we can do with the day, but yet I've learned from working with folks that we keep saying, like, there's going to be that day where I have, nothing going on and I can just focus on getting it done. And it's going to be so glorious. Well, they're unicorns. They don't happen that frequently, if ever. And then when we do have full days, we squander them. So I want to break away from this idea that you need a full day to get your work done. And that once you have that day, then everything is going to work out for you. It's going to be great. Nope. 2-hour blocks are things that we can find throughout the days, throughout the week. And that's actually what can power a lot of the work. So instead of thinking days, think in terms of these chunks and blocks. Okay. 10-15 split. It's just a way, there's a poster that's not going to go into too long. It's a way of checking in with your plans. 10 minutes in the morning to review your plan that you made, 15 minutes at the end of the day when it's fresh. We'll throw a link up so we don't spend a whole lot of time on it. But some people ask me, like, how long does it take to continue to do this sort of momentum planning stuff, man? Like, I feel like I'm planning a lot. 10 minutes in the morning to review your plans, 15 minutes in the afternoon making the plan. And like, I ain't got time for that, bruh. Like, I got all the stuff going. Like, look, what I'll say to that, and I know that I have to do this because this comes up a lot. Steal time from the stuff that doesn't matter nearly as much. Like, steal time from social media. Steal time from email, like the sort of grazing that you'll do on email. Spend time from, all the other places. Like, are the headlines right now really serving you? Maybe steal some time from there to do some planning. Most people, I won't say all people, because I want to acknowledge that some people are in dire circumstances to where, like, really every minute is chewed up and they can't do anything about it. But most of us can steal 10 minutes here. We can steal 15 minutes there. And then as we get better about, boundaries, and as we get better about planning and communication, we can start to steal bigger chunks of time to focus on our work. Okay. I'm going to pause because I've dumped a lot on you. So Jess, what's coming up as themes or points I need to question, or clarification points that I need to answer, I should say?
It looks like there's just a lot of general chatter and talk amongst everybody. There's definitely some good, more specific questions that are coming up about various components of the different planners.
Great.
So.
All right. I'm just going to take a quick scan. Yep. A lot of great. Yep. All right. Just checking. Okay. Looking good, y'all. We're going to keep going. We'll come up with some of the questions. Just want to set it up so that we're going pretty well here. Let me get this going again. I'm going to come back to that last slide once I do some explaining of the planner. So there's a lot of momentum that starts happening and a lot of clarity that happens once you're able to start tying quarter-sized projects together. It's kind of like the secret sauce of getting stuff done, because those are the projects that are long enough to make a significant dent in what you're trying to do, or they enable you to get really meaningful sizes of your projects done. And it turns out the transformative projects normally require many quarters to figure out. So I just wanted to put that out there. There's a lot in which you'll see me in this one really talk about the quarterly level of projects, maybe some monthly level projects, but that's both because of the level of detail that's useful for most people on the call. But it's also because I want you to start thinking about, like, what does shaping my quarters look like? Now, to be fair, you don't have to get wound around the axis about whether we're talking January through March technically, or whether we're talking about 3 months time periods. Like, I know it's February and you're like, the quarter's already done. In one frame of time, one perspective, yes. In another perspective, think about the next 3 months and get after it, right? So we get to define our frame of reference with time. which is it's a lot of freedom in being able to do that, but it also is no end to our insanity because we will often pick the wrong time reference and we'll wait for the greatest days to start something. So another link there, Jess, this is the one about not getting stuck on start days or the beginning of the day, beginning of the month. I forget what we titled that one. You know which one I'm talking about though?
Yes.
Okay, got it. She's got it. Okay, so let's dive into the planner, shall we? Just as a setup, and then we'll go through some actual working some people's projects here. So I'm going to start with the annual momentum planner. And I'm just going to walk through some of the sections, how you use them, and what to do with them. So annual momentum planner, you start with your yearly goals. What will you accomplish this year? You'll notice the hegemony of 5 projects there, right? You don't have to use all 5, but this gives that biggest level of that project pyramid pie. Fairly straightforward there. Small note, it's like, it's not what will you, or what are you going to try this year? It's not what are you going to work on, it's what will you accomplish this year? That will is a powerful word to use when you're talking to yourself, when you're thinking about your plans. Really have the conceptual and emotional discipline to move from I can do that or I can try to do that to saying I will do that. You'll notice just as you're doing it, like if you did a big dump of things you'd like to do, when you say which of those you will do, you'll notice a different bit of emotional grip there. Major events, we have these on here because if you're going to do something that's going to require major amount of time that's going to disrupt a month or so, you want to put that on there because that helps you figure out what you're going to do. So for instance, if you're going on a 2 or 3 week vacation this year, you might want to put that in your momentum planner so that as you're planning your quarters, you can see, oh, wait a second, I've got that trip that month. That's going to take one of my project slots. So I don't need to overstuff. Like I don't need to assume that I'm going to get 5 projects done and go on my vacation at the same time. And I know it sounds obvious when I say that, but when you look at what we actually do to ourselves, a lot of times we assume we're going to do these big events and do everything else we're going to do at the same time. Okay. So major events are those at the annual time perspective are those ones that you know are going to require enough planning or enough disruption that you need to account for them at this level. So for instance, marriages, major moves, if you're launching a business or a major product that would go there. Things about that size that really are going to make a big difference. Breaking things down in Q1 objectives, go back. I wish I could have like 2 screens at the same time without it being crazy because I want to be able to point to, the big yearly goal breaking down into 3 quarter size objectives or 3 sizes of projects. So you notice that you have 5 projects at this time perspective. Okay. See what we're doing here? I know it's madness. You have on the digital planner, you have a little Gantt chart. You don't necessarily have to use it. If you use it this way, don't write the full project. That's where you might want to, have little short codes for your projects. Or you can use it like if you know that a project starts in January and goes through February, you can draw a little project block that goes there. People don't really use it that much, or some people love it. We try to make the planner so that you can use it however you wish. I don't know what happened there, but I'm going to keep going. Looks like I forgot a slide or I miscopied something. Let's see. Yeah, well, that's just frustrating, y'all. Let's see what I forgot. No, I actually didn't. Ha! Beat myself up for nothing. Look at me. All right, moving on to the quarterly momentum planner. It's going to start with major events. Well, it's going to actually start with your yearly goals because your yearly goals, remember, you're going to want to look at that yearly goal and then look down at your quarterly goal and say, okay, how does this yearly goal come down to the quarter? Now, if you've done the annual planning first, which some people who are top planner, I need to talk about this real quick. Someone else reminded me the other day, I need to talk about this. Some of us have a preference for top-down planning, meaning we like to look at the top 5 goals for the year and work our way down. That's very natural for us. and that's all good. Some of us are bottom up planners, meaning we have to look at what's right in front of us, get our arms around that, and then see how it elevates. So you want me to tell you which is the exact way to do your momentum planner or your momentum planning. But what I'm going to tell you is it depends upon whether you're more of a top-down planner or a bottom-up planner. If you're a top-down planner, you start with the annual, and then you go quarterly, and then you go monthly, and you go that way. If you're bottom-up, then you want probably start at the monthly level because that's a big enough perspective for you to then go up. If you don't know what you are, start at the monthly level and then figure out if you need to go down or versus if you need to go up. And how will you know if you need to go down? If you're naturally pulled to start chunking those projects out, chunking those month-sized projects down into week-sized projects, then go with it. If you look at it and you're like, it's not, I don't see how it all fits together, then you need to go to quarter size, or you need to go up to the quarterly level, because when you're looking for context, when you're looking for meaning, you go up a level. When you're looking for clarity of action, you go down a level. Okay? So if you don't know how things are fitting together, you go up a level. If you don't know how you're going to get it done, you go down a level. Okay? Yes, depending upon how well you slept last night, whether you worked out, whether you had a bad burrito, whether you're not feeling well, on any given day, you might have different affinities between where you're going. So it's always sort of that dialing up or dialing down, kind of like when you go to the optometrist and they do the glasses thing where you're like, is this clearer? Is this clearer? You're doing the same sort of thing with your planning. But whenever you need more context, you go up. When you need more clarity of action, you go down. Okay. So assuming you've done your annual momentum planning, your quarter one objectives are taken from, man, I screwed that up. What did I do here, guys? My slides got all jacked. Oh, presentation fail. If you did it in your annual momentum planning, when you switch over to your quarterly momentum planner, then you're going to see that whatever you put in your annual momentum planning, you just cut and copy and put it over in your quarterly objectives. You already done that work unless you found that you're off. If you're off, then you have to start at the quarterly level. I'm going to actually take a second to see what happened here. Okay. I think what happened is that Google presentation froze up on me and went a few slides ahead and I didn't see it. So that's why I'm a little bit confused there. I apologize for that, everybody. Going back to the annual planner. I know we're going backwards again. I apologize. It sped up on me. At the top, you have your values, themes, or challenges. I'll come back to this in just a minute. But instead of thinking in terms of resolutions, which I find we tend not to be that great at, values, themes, or challenges is a spot for you to really look at what's facing you as far as values or themes. So a value could be, I have the value of family this year. That's what you want to focus on. You put that in there and that helps you guide some of your decisions later on in the quarterly and monthly sort of thing. Like you can look at your projects and say, how do these projects relate to this value of family? If it's a theme, it could be something like amplify. There's some people, like I think Chris Brogan has a great sort of tool that he guides people with. They were to pick 3 words for the year, and those are your themes. But we all sort of have themes like leverage or healthy mind or different things like that. Get smart. Those can be themes that aren't necessarily resolutions, but they're sort of guiding frameworks for your projects, and it helps you come back to it. Challenges are just those things that you put up there that you either want to overcome or that you want to remember that they're there. It's like, you can put going through a divorce as a challenge. Why would one put that? Well, turns out that when you're planning some of your projects at the lower level, like if you're going through that, like it's helpful to have it up there so you can be more compassionate to yourself when things are happening. You're like, oh, why am I not getting things done? And, oh, it's like, oh, there's this really life-altering thing that you're going through right now. How about we acknowledge the space that needs? So that's what this block does. You don't have to use it. I encourage you to think about in broad strokes what you want to use, what you want your years to look like. This is one of those places where I'd say, as much as I like SMART goals and very specific, actionable, goals that way, this is not the place for that, right? This is the place for those more those softer, squishier, harder to pin down things to show up. Okay, we already talked about major events. That's what threw me off there. It ends on Q1 objectives, right? So as we switch to the quarterly objective, the quarterly momentum planner, if you put something in Q1, again, unless you got behind or your plans dramatically changed, that's one of the first things that you're going to put in your Q1 goals. So we're going to start with major events for the same way. What might happen this quarter that really affects you? So again, if you're going on that vacation, you're getting married, so on and so forth, that's where that would happen. Now, as you go down in time perspective, different things might start showing up, because at that level of perspective, it makes a difference. So, you probably wouldn't put 4-day events on your annual, 4-day events that are not like marriages or weddings on your annual planner, but you might put a 4-day event on the quarterly, right? Because it starts to make a difference. It starts to be at a level at which you need to be more planful about it. Okay. Now, the reason I showed yearly goals here, or the reason I showed it this way, is because it's just a way of thinking about the plan, no matter which version that you have, how that yearly goal, could turn into a quarterly objective, and then might turn into a monthly objective, And so what some people find to be useful is to try to have like their same goal. Like if you had start a business as your first goal, I just use that one, not because I care so much about starting business. It's just easy project. So it could be writing a book, could be going back to school, whatever, but I'll say, start a business. That will be one. Your first quarterly objective in that one slot, you might want to put something that's related to starting that business, a quarter size aspect of that. And we'll talk about that in a second. Then when you go down to the monthly level, using that same sort of slot, maybe you put something related to your business in that particular slot. Okay. Milestones and benchmarks will sometimes confuse folks, which is why I have it here. As far as milestones goes, sometimes it's just at that level of planning, at the quarterly level of planning, it's just useful to think about some major steps that are along the way that you just want to make sure that you capture at the quarterly level. And benchmarks are sort of those things that happen that you want to make sure that you document, because it's so easy to forget that something really great happened as part of a quarter. And this is just your place to capture like, oh, this thing happened. So that's just what those are. So a benchmark could be, for instance, that you finished your book on February 17th, right? It could be that you got fully booked with clients. It could be that you got accepted into UCLA. It could be whatever that you would put over in that benchmark that you want to say, hey, that happened, and I want to acknowledge that happened at my quarterly planner. So again, you don't have to use any of these different cells. All righty.